Preston, how you doing?
Good, hon. How's it going?
It's going quite well. I want to talk defense today with this LSU football team about to crank up the spring. There was some reports this week that Harold Perkins will be moving to the star position. There are some transfers that they've brought in, specifically in the secondary. You got some defensive linemen that have got to grow up. So there's a lot to get to. I want to talk big picture first before we start to get to some potentially individual players. Do you feel like LSU is close to fielding a quote-unquote dominant defense?
Yeah, I do. I'm looking at this roster from top to bottom. You've got quality players in just about every position group. I think they've addressed almost all your needs in the portal, and we're talking about veteran guys with good film. I think they've got a job to do here, too. You've got a lot of talented pieces. Now you got to find homes for them. For example, like Harold Perkins, I don't think there's anybody out there debating that he's a talented player. It's just you got to find a way to put him in the best position to succeed. And frankly, you've got to do that with 11 guys on the field at the same time where they're all in the best position to succeed, or at least set others up in positions to succeed. And I have a lot of confidence in this coaching staff as well. I really do believe in this defensive coaching staff. I think this is a defense that if they're not a top 25 defense, I think you got to start, asking some questions.
Let's talk Perkins first. Star, responsibilities, strengths, what the whole package. What say you?
Yeah, Star's an interesting position because, obviously you can get aggressive and put him kind of in the box for run support. You can blitz him off the edge. But you also have to sometimes you got to man up and cover a slot receiver at that corner spot. Obviously a little more zone than man coverage in that spot. And Harold Perkins, frankly, for a linebacker, has graded out very well. I think he definitely has the speed to play some of these positions. But my overall thought on it is, well, we've definitely given him a look at linebacker, and it wasn't quite, nothing overwhelmed you to make you think, well, LSU simply cannot survive without Harold Perkins, a middle linebacker. You tried him at edge rusher, and, well, at times he was great. I just think he's too talented a player to just use as a third down specialist. So I like that you're at least giving him a crack at this position.
Let's talk about the edge rushers. They bring in 3 out of the transfer portal. You got Relaford back as well, Carpenter back as well. How do you feel about LSU's ability to rush the passer off the edge?
Yeah, and Peyton coming back. I mean, he should be not coming back. He's coming from Florida State.
Yeah.
He should be a plug-and-play type guy. I like a lot. I love what you get out of Gabriel Relaford. He might not even be a starter. And then you have to look at guys like Jack Tyburn out of Florida. Does he play edge? That's what they've got him listed at for now as an edge rusher. But there was some talk maybe of him playing outside linebacker. I like – and look, they're bringing in a very talented Damian Shanklin, Jamari Butler, another guy out of the portal. And don't sleep on Dylan Carpenter. We're starting to you look at him, and he is a specimen out of Santa Maria High School. He is very chiseled and physically developed. It's just you're wondering when's it going to show up on the field. A lot of guys that I could see being candidates to be great players on the edge rusher. I think they really did a good job addressing that because coming off the season, that looks like it was going to be a gaping hole for LSU where you kind of, I hope Carpenter and I hope what's-his-face, Relaford are ready to step up because you don't have much else there, and they did a really good job filling that. I think they're a good spot there.
It's not a good story to tell because I can't remember who said it, but one of the young offensive linemen during camp last year said he really hated trying to block Dylan Carpenter. I don't remember who it was that said that, but you can see when you're out on the practice field, he's a big dude, just behind a lot of really good players last year. On the interior of the defensive line, how big a deal is Jacobian Guillory coming back?
Massive. You just really hope that he's up to speed 100%. A lot of guys with injuries like that, they come back and they're overweight. They got to get reconditioned. You hope that he's up to speed. So look, you can't undersell what a fifth-year defensive player means for your program, especially in this age of the transfer portal where it's just such a rarity, the experience. But, there's other players to like. Dominic McKinley came in very raw in fall camp. I remember looking at him in fall camp for the first time, and he would go right behind Jacobian Guillory, and I said, boy, there's just a gaping hole in terms of how polished each player was. But toward the end of the season, you started to see why Dominic McKinley was labeled a 5-star. He got multiple sacks in games. You really like what you're getting out of him. Ahmad Bro, that's another player you have to like. You know, he showed you some really good stuff in the bowl game and down the stretch of the season. You know, I really think, you know, they're bringing in a lot of other guys. You know, Cider Mitchell out of Texas, who is a big guy. You talk about goal line reps. Love how you can situationally use him. Again, there's probably no rock star candidate at defensive tackle. There's no Glenn Dorsey that you're lining up out there, but there's a lot of guys I can see giving you serviceable reps. You just have to hope you stay healthy there.
Preston Guy is our guest, TigerBait.com. Talk LSU football every Friday at the beginning of hour number 1. You think DJ Pickett's going to start the opener?
I think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but he is very talented, long player, and there's certainly enough DBs to compete with him. I know on signing day, it looked like, or I guess when he committed, I should say, it looked like he was going to be your lone candidate back there. But, you know, they've done a really good job hitting the portal and having guys that, you know, he's going to have to compete with, you know. But I certainly think that based off of what I've seen in his high school film and his measurables, I think he'll quickly climb above the guys we had out there, you know, P.J. Woodland and Ashton Stamps. I could definitely see him beating them out. But now you're talking about Mansour Delane and Jakeem Jackson and a lot of very talented players that you're bringing in all of a sudden. It's good that this is a conversation, is what I'm getting at here. So, yeah, I think he's going to do what it takes to be starter day one, but I'm very interested to see what he looks like when he straps it out there in fall camp.
It's just one of those deals where you take a group of like 6 DBs / corners, and you just need 3 of them. You need half of them to be really good players. Like, you don't need everybody to be awesome. You need to have enough to where if like 3-4 hit, that you're in the right spot. Do you feel like Corey Raymond and the defensive backfield has done that?
Yeah, you know, I talk about that all the time. It's like anytime you've got a player, you're rolling a die. It's just kind of, you know, how many sides are on that die and what are the numbers? Are you going to hit what you need to roll? You know, and that applies to returning starters as well, by the way. I mean, technically there's a chance that Nussmeier takes a step back and he isn't that guy next year. Now, you're rolling a pretty good set of die to get what you need with Nussmeier. But it's all odds. And one thing I like is a team with a lot of depth. You give me 5 guys who you feel like you've got good odds to get an SEC caliber starter, guess what? You're probably going to be good at that position one way or another. Not to mention depth, just having the amount of guys that you have faith in. It also injury bug. You know, if you've got 2 guys ready to play, one gets hurt, guess what? Boom. So you talk about guys who are candidates to be good players next year. I mean, you've got, you know, you got your returning guys. You got, you know, your Jordan Gilbert, your Deshaun Spears of the world. Maybe you get good reps out of them. What about C.J. Jim Coley? What about Tamarcus Cooley? I mean, a lot of guys that I could see having an argument to be all SEC type guys, plus all the corners we just mentioned. Yeah, I think they've done a really good job. I wouldn't be upset, though, if we looked up in the spring window and they added one more body to that defensive backfield where you're like, I could see him being pretty good. I wouldn't be shocked about that. But thus far, yes, I'm certainly satisfied with the volume of players that have good chances of being quality players next year.
I'm certainly not alone in my assertion back in August that Deshaun Spears would force his way into the starting lineup and be a starter by probably early October, and that just didn't happen last year. Did that surprise you, and how do you feel about him entering a second year?
Yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. Particularly, I don't think the reps he gave you were so bad that, you know, you just needed to roll with the veteran guy who hadn't shown you anything in 4 years. You know, he's at Ole Miss now, so we'll see how that pans out. I'll tell you what, that'll be a great parameter. Typically, players LSU loses to the portal, they go to lesser schools, and almost always they don't really do too much, right? And that means you're doing a good job with your portal with the guys you're losing. If a guy like that who couldn't do nothing for you for 4 years goes out and balls out at Ole Miss, that's where you got to start pointing some fingers at the coach. So yeah. That being said, I think that we're definitely going to see some changes there, and I think they'll be in a better spot.
We'll talk offense next week, and then the week after it'll be spring football time. A lot of teams canceling spring games. Your feeling on that?
Yeah, I love me some spring football. But my thing is why? Yeah, I get why it's unappealing for the non-casual, non-junkie. It's a glorified practice, but I think ultimately it could just use some spicing up, not abandoning. And maybe if teams start to abandon their spring game, the NCAA will wake up and say, "Hey, let's let these teams roll out and play a G4 team." You know what I mean? Like, let's let LSU play Southern Miss, and then I watch how much interest goes up in that game.
It's Matt Rule says they're not playing because he thinks other teams are going to watch the spring game, find some second teamer that they like, and then go pay him $75K to leave or something. And he says they don't want that to happen, so they're not going to play a spring game. I found that to be fascinating and probably not true.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule says a lot of stuff.
Have a good weekend, Preston. We'll talk next week. Thanks, man.
You too, Hunt. See you soon.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com, all your football covers. They got you over there at TigerBait.com. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.